Alright, well, welcome back everyone to another episode of FLCL February. We're almost to the end now. It's kind of surreal. I really want to take a second before we really get into things and thank you so much for all your support throughout this series so far. I know we're still a growing channel and it's in the early phases of what ultimately will want to be a very successful channel and potential business. But you guys are giving us all the support in the world, and we literally can't do it without you. So thank you so much for your continued support. Just a reminder, you have this episode coming today. Then next week, you're going to have episode 6, which will be the final episode of the series. However, we're going to do a series retrospective after that will wrap up the whole thing in a nice little bow. So with that being said, thank you so much, and let's get underway. So, episode 5, titled Brittle Bullet, debuted on December 21st, 2000, and on Toonami on August 9th, 2003. This episode, while sticking to the more story-driven narrative that episode 4 started us on, sticks itself back into more of the themes that the first half of the series went with. Some more over-the-top action and comedy.
Haruko begins to switch her attention from Kamon to Naota, arousing the former's jealousy. They resolve to duel for Haruko's affections, which amounts to little more than an intense airsoft firefight with Kanti allied with Kamon. During the fight, Lieutenant Kitsurubami tries to unsuccessfully blow Kanti away. Mamimi, observing Naota's intimate relationship with Haruko, questions him as to how much he really likes her, leading him to confront her about their relationship. Finally, his NO channel erupts with one of the largest objects yet, a Leviathan robot, while a gunfight happens between Commander Amuro, his group of backup gunmen, and Haruko herself. Trapped on top of the giant robot, Naota resolves to save Mamimi, and bravely fuses with Kanti. However, despite his and Haruko's best efforts, they are unable to stop the giant robot, which rampages towards the medical mechanica plant. Kanti then manifests the power of Atomisk by producing his EB-0 1961 Gibson bass guitar, to the amazement of Commander Amuro and Haruko. Kanti defeats the giant robot, which turns out to be a gargantuan hand, rocketing over the medical mechanical plant and straight into the ground, where it becomes a petrified monument, proceeding over the plant.
This episode in particular I love as it addresses a lot of different issues. First and foremost, it addresses the very awkward situation that Haruko has made between Naota and his dad, revolving around one of my favorite references ever done in a show, referencing the iconic loop on the third opening moment with a certain punching bag. They end up having a really big over-the-top duel that ends up being really fun. However, it leads to a much more serious topic at hand. With Naota's love and interest going towards Haruko, Mamimi has decided to confront Naota over the whole situation. And I really like how this was handled, because it was very clear early on that she was developing feelings for him. However, he never really seemed like he was doing quite the same. So when she actually comes out and asks him about their relationship, it was pretty surreal, especially in a show that's as over the top as FLCL is.
Part of the fun that comes with FLCL as a franchise is all the obscure references that get scattered around each episode. When it comes to one of Naota's friends bringing up Crystal Pepsi, a discontinued soda brand by this time, and Haruko turning into the main girl from the Daikon series, it really lets you know that the creative team behind this really puts a lot of love into every frame into the animation. As a fan of South Park myself, I really appreciated the attention to detail that they put into recreating the show's cardboard cutout style, to even modeling Naota after one of the main characters from that show, as soon as he pulled the hood of his jacket over his head. One of the plot points that I remember clearly about this episode are the complications that come about between Naota and Mamimi's relationship. As soon as they first make eye contact with each other, you can tell that something's a little bit off. They've never really been strained like this. It's always been a straightforward back and forth kind of vibe that they've always had with each other since the beginning of the series. Mamimi invites Naota to hang out by the river against his better judgment, Mamimi seduces him, he takes it, and then they just part ways, to rinse and repeat the cycle. It feels like this starts to become the point where Mamimi actually starts to have genuine regret about the actions she's committed against Naota in the past. Since Naota's brother moved away a long time ago, he's been the designated person to dump all of her unresolved feelings onto. But the situation changes drastically when it seems like Naota's trying to fight for Haruko's affections rather than Mamimi's own. Now, from a moral standpoint, it would be perfectly acceptable for Mimimi to distance herself from Naota because, in the first place, their relationship isn't really appropriate. This doesn't necessarily make it okay for Naota to pursue Haruko for the exact same reasons, but this isn't really Mimimi's place to say at that point. This minor strain doesn't come without Mimimi questioning Naota about his true feelings and what Haruko might actually be intending with him. But the tables get turned when he actually tries to show affections for her and she ends up rejecting him. Most likely because she just doesn't feel comfortable anymore. Things don't exactly get made easier when Mimimi and Naota are on top of the giant robot together and she's desperately crying for Naota's brother, rather than Naota who's right next to her. This just upsets Naota even more and more, because it makes him realize that Mimimi isn't all the way over his brother yet, and that if he ever wants Mimimi's true attention, then he has to prove that he can stand on his own ground instead of being in his brother's shadow, and that makes him willingly fuse with Kanti in order to save her.
Now, of course, his no causes a big reaction that leads to the biggest, baddest robot of the whole show up till this point, shooting massive, monstrously sized bullets, with Haruko coming in to save the day. Funny enough, this scene in particular, from an animation standpoint, I nerded out very hard over. Everyone knows this scene, for me, references back to one of my most talked about shows and one of our earliest videos on this channel. It's a direct reference to Daikon 4. From the bunny suit to her riding her guitar, everything. It's definitely one of the most well-known instances of the Daikon girls' influence being put onto a show. It's obviously one of my standout scenes for animation. Everything runs really fluid and smooth, and it makes sense for the climax of an episode, to say the least. What I really like, though, is that this really sets up the final pieces of the puzzle that lead to the final episode of the series. And you can really see that Naota is struggling between his identity of naturally being a kid, but also all the steps he's taken to try to be anything but a kid. And I really like that. So for me, this episode in particular, while it takes I consider it, in this 3-episode mini-arc, the nice middle ground. So I think of it as a half filler, half problem establisher. As well, some scenes are just there to have mindless fun and a good time. It also really sets up the big issue that leads into episode 6. And those are two things. One, Naota's rejection of other people in his life over the idea of trying to be an adult, while also understanding that there is a bigger thing at play revolving around Haruko that really adds a level of mystery entering the final episode, but also shows you that this is a conflict that Naota's unfortunately kind of on a losing end regardless on what he chooses. And while he hasn't completely destroyed his relationship with everyone in his life, the people he cared about the most he is ultimately torn apart because he's trying too hard to do something that he isn't, which is to be an adult.
Now, I personally don't think it's wrong that Naota got so angry with her. She is the one who tried to tease him out of nowhere one day and just kept sticking with it. And given the difference between their ages, it's not like he really owed anything to Mimimi in the first place. The only reason they even knew each other in the first place was through their connection through Tasuku, Naota's older brother. And now that Tasuku's in America, they have less and less reasons to hang out because it doesn't seem like they really have a lot in common anymore. With Naota trying so hard to develop his maturity and become an adult like Haruko, Mimimi's kinda left behind because she has matured a little bit, but she isn't quite there yet.
So, of course, with every episode, you have my favorite Pillows track of the episode. Now, this one for me is honestly one of my favorite in the whole series. It doesn't get talked about too much, but it's not even just so much of how it's used in the show, it's more the song itself. And that song is Patricia. It plays right before the break in the episode. It's almost summer relaxation vibes, really make me mellow out a lot, and I kind of like that. As it's used for in the show, it does a really good job soothing down the overall tensions of the first half of the episode. With the first half of the episode being nothing but gunfights and over-the-top action, to have this song be placed where it was in the episode really felt nice, because it slowed everything down, which is, I think, the point of the song, and it worked phenomenally. And while other songs like Little Busters, which is a staple song in the show at this point, were really good, I think for me, Patricia really is that perfect combination of a song that I want to listen to outside of the anime, but also it made me feel certain things while watching the anime.
My favorite song is this week's fighting theme, which is called Blues Drive Monster. It has the same amount of energy that Little Buster's provides for any of the fight scenes in the past, but it brings about a new chaotic type of energy that really comes with the guitar wailing. The enemies that have appeared in the show so far have been dangerous, but never quite like this. The stakes are super high during this battle, and you really need a track like Blues Drive Monster to really fit the tone that it's going for. While Patricia does indeed give a soft, summery vibe, this definitely picks things back up and brings us right back into the action that's so familiar and famous with this series.
Alright, well that does it for this episode. Hey, I want to thank you guys so much. We're almost over. It's kind of crazy. I'm so excited to deliver you guys the, climax of both this series and of the show. And we really hope we can give you a good end result for what you've been listening to for the last month. We can't thank you enough for all your support. Of course, give Sketcher some love. He's been doing a phenomenal job editing this whole series together. Make sure you check out his YouTube channel, and we'll make sure that's linked in the description below. And while it's been a little quiet on our website recently, we got some projects that we're working on that are going to be going up, as well as some articles that are still in the editing phases. So pay attention there too, and make sure you give that a check out when you can, okay? All the support is very much thanked, and we appreciate it. Make sure to comment what you want us to do next with this channel, or if there's any ideas or things you want us to see in general, and we'll see you next time.
Well, we're winding down to the final episode, but there's not much to talk about. Next on Footy Cooty, Episode 6, Fully Climax. Hey, what does Footy Cooty mean anyway?